Oh, Brian, you're up there. Brian. Hey, good evening, everybody. Oh, can everybody hear? Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to our June Town Hall. We're so glad all of you took time away from your busy days and this beautiful weather to come sit inside with us for 2 hours. This is all about the community and all about all of you. So if you've been to town halls in the past, we started doing them in 2025. We did one in May and one in September, and we're continuing that for this year, doing one in June and then one in September. We put up some potential topic areas that have been in front of the council, that have been in front of city staff recently that maybe people have an interest in, but we are not locked to these. These are just ideas. So if anyone here has anything in particular they would like to bring up and talk about, please do so, raise your hand. We'll come pass the mics around and whatnot. But before we get started, I thought we'd just do quick introductions. So I'm sure you all know your elected officials, but we have Councilmember Mark Fraley, Councilmember Bruce London, Councilmember Jesse Zahn, and Councilmember Joe Hall. And then our city staff, I'll actually let them give a brief introduction of themselves, and we'll start with our amazing police chief, Todd Szymanski.
Yes. Yep. As announced there, I'm Todd Szymanski, the Chief of Police for Nisswa. Good evening.
Brian Farrell, Spirits in Nisswa.
Stephen Timblin, City Planner.
Tom Blummer, Public Works Director.
Amber Moon Peterson, Parks and Rec.
Maggie Wentler, Interim City Administrator.
Jane Mashad, Deputy Clerk.
Perfect. Well, we're grateful to have all of our department heads and staff here tonight to help us navigate through and answer questions as well. So does anyone in the audience have anything that you guys would like to start with? Otherwise, I actually thought instead of particularly going in this order that I'd maybe start with some different department updates that can kind of give people a pulse of where things are. Does it sound good? Okay. Why don't we actually start with Tom Blummer, our Director of Public Works, because he oversees all the roads. So we have the 2026 road bond and 2027 road bond. And then he's got other areas under Public Works, like the sewer ponds and the lift stations. But I know at my mayor's event a couple weeks ago, there were folks that were asking about the roads that are ongoing right now, and I've gotten a few emails. So I guess we'll turn it to Tom to start, and then if you guys have questions, please raise your hand and we'll get over to you with the mic.
Okay, good evening. So the first thing I'll talk about is the 26th road bond. And so currently there's 3 roads that are being paved. That's Old Government Trail, Polks Road, and Hole in the Day. They're about half done. By the end of the week, they should have their second lift of pavement on them, and they'll be done for the year. The rest of the roads, we are waiting on right-of-way to be acquired. We can't begin the project until that right-of-way is secure. Our city attorney is working on that issue as we speak. I'm hoping that we can begin soon, possibly right after the 4th of July. With that, with everything finishing up before the snow flies this fall. The 27 road bond for next year is going to be City Hall Street and Church Street, and then some stuff on Lakers Lane. We're working on some ideas for sidewalks right now, and what we call streetscaping. And so what that would be is things like light poles, banners, anything that would decorate the street and the sidewalks. So Anybody has thoughts on that, feel free to reach out and share them with us, and we'll try to include that. Otherwise, some of you may have heard that we're considering a small roundabout in front of the school for next year. That's a big safety improvement, we feel. It's been well received by the school and the surrounding property owners in that area. The idea of that. There'll be some lighting and signage that goes with that to improve the safety and access to the school. It also improved drainage in that area as well. So, what else can I talk about? Probably the one area that we have that's bad news right now is one of our sewer ponds has started leaking. And what it is there's a rubber liner that seals these ponds, and it's 35 years old. And it has sprung a leak. And so we're in the preliminary stages of figuring out what that project will look like to replace that. It's not just a simple leak like where you can fix an inner tube. The entire thing has aged out and has to be replaced. So it will be a significant project. There'll be more information on that as the summer continues. Yeah, that's about all I have for now.
Yes, let me come around with the mic. If you can just state your first and last name and where you live, that would be great.
Charlotte Philhauer, 25624 Roy Lane. Just a quick question on Roy Lane, where that one is in the schedule
It's this summer.
this summer? Okay,
Yes. Mhm.
okay. I just wondered because you didn't mention. And then does the city have access to our email addresses? Because I would just offer a suggestion when you're dealing with road reconstruction and all those pink signs and the neighbors start gabbing and they're like, oh my God, what's that pink flag? It would really be nice. I understand we don't want to spend money on postage and letters and all that, but it'd really be nice if for streets that are going to go under construction is to send out an email blast of this is what's going on. This is who's out working your street. These, the pink flags with ROW mean right away. You're not losing half your front yard. I just would love for us to have a little bit better communication from the city as far as the process
Sure.
and what everything means, because it just would be helpful and it would ease your time of getting phone calls and messages, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, the phone calls are not a problem. If you have a question, please do call. That's the quickest way for you to get information directly related to your property. As far as emailing everyone, I'd say it's almost impossible for us to get everyone's email address. What we do is on our website, there's a box you can check for email notifications. Okay.
Like, I have that, I get notified of all the council and planning and all that, but when it's dealing with a specific road project, I think educating your residents of what the process is, the timeline, what all the markings mean
Okay.
is helpful. Just helpful.
Sure.
Just
Noted.
just-
Thank you.
Kim, did you have your hand?
Hi, Kim Evian, 3715 Upper Roy Lake Road. Just, you didn't mention our road either for next year. Is that going to for sure get done?
So the council has pushed that road project to 2027. So next summer.
So it will for sure, because it was supposed to be done in 2025, then it got pushed back to 2026. So can we be guaranteed it will be done in 2027?
I can't guarantee that. The 5 folks here maybe can.
Thanks, Kim. Do any council members want to chime in at all related to the questions from Charla and Kim comments, or? I don't, well, you're the public works liaison, so you can use whatever. You want this.
This is fine. Kim, I think our approach is trying to keep things as on course as possible, plus not having any of these roads slip any further. There's a lot of frustration on definitely Roy Lake and Upper Roy. And I know how those roads are. I mean, it's pothole haven. So I think this council made a pretty good effort to try to keep these ones moving forward for 26. Now 27 could be a different council at that point, but I would hope that that's not going to get pushed.
Okay, does anyone have questions on the sewer ponds that Tom talked about, the lift station, any of those public works core areas?
Got any estimates on that pond?
I do not. We are the big sewer ponds, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, the big ones, okay. There's no, you don't know the cost yet?
I do
Gotta be-
not. So at the council meeting next week, the council's gonna get a proposal from our engineer to work on that. So that estimate will come from them.
If you can, again, just state your first and last name so the people watching can.
Right. Roger Landers, Eden Lake Road. This has nothing to do with the current construction projects going on, but want to talk a little bit about future streets and how we, as citizens, especially new streets that are going to be really expensive. So at the February meeting this year, it's council meeting, we heard a concept design of developing the Boberg project, Boberg property. And for those that don't know where Boberg property is, it's a 42-acre piece that lies along 371 right across from the marina and the car wash. Along with that development, there's going to have to be a new street put in. And I'm hoping that maybe, Tom, at this point, you can kind of tell us a little bit about the mileage involved, where the road, where it's going to connect, and approximate cost. Because at this point, you know, putting in a multi-million-dollar street probably goes under the radar until it lands at decision at city council. We've got planning commission and public works that we talk about streets. But I'd like for Tom to talk a little bit about this. Right now, I think it's called the Backage Road, and what's going to happen there. Thank you.
So currently, there's nothing happening with that, with the backage roads. It's a concept for now. So I don't have a cost estimate really to share with you, but where it would go from is County 77, and it would extend over towards Lower Roy Lake Road. That's the concept, and it's subject to how would I say, modification based on development that would occur along there. What we're expecting to do is we're waiting for our EDA to be formed, and they're going to help us figure out how to pay for something like that. Like as you alluded to, it probably will be $1 million project when it happens, just because of the width and the fact that it's meant to carry truck traffic and other things like that. There's other elements to it, such as bike trail possibility, if that's desired. All of those things are elements that it can affect the cost. So it's really kind of on a holding pattern until an EDA is formed. Yeah, that's been discussed longer than I've been with the city. 2005 is when those were first
But
talked about.
to that point, though, what has been discussed for years, the point that Roger brought up was first the Boberg project and then a potential city road that would need to be installed to make that project viable, or the Backage Road itself.
Say that again, Jesse. I'm not sure I follow.
Are you indicating that the Boberg project has been known for and
No,
planned, or the Backage Road
The
itself?
backage roads.
Right, yeah.
The other thing with that is MnDOT, driving it. I'm not sure if everyone's seen the MnDOT plans, but that intersection out in front of Subway and stuff, that is one of their first intersections that they would like to close, mainly due to safety and the high number of accidents there and stuff. And so also a few things like that with MinDOT will really drive these roads and these backage roads in the whole corridor. And so for us to get out ahead of that a little bit with MinDOT, they had put their plans out, what, a year and a half ago, Tom?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And on a lot of their plans, all these roads were defined from them, actually, is kind of somewhat of a driving force behind it.
Kind of to expand on what Joe was saying too, MinDOT's cost participation changes with their elected leadership too. Early on, we had heard that they would participate at a much greater rate than what they're currently willing to do. That could change again. So trying to be ready for the next time there's a favorable condition with the state is probably our best move. So.
I'm Valerie Wilkening. And I would, a question regarding the sewage plant, if you have 3 ponds, correct?
4.
So do we have a budget in place or a projection in place if you've already got one failing where you're going to budget and plan for the cost for the remaining ones to be redone as well, so we're not sitting without the money there?
What we're going to do is look at all 3 of the original ponds. So there's 4 total ponds. One of them is relatively new. The 3 original ponds share liner material. And so one has failed already. The other 2 are probably not far behind. So we're going to be working on estimates for all 3 and try to plan that accordingly to have as little impact as we can on people.
Do you have a question?
Hi, I think this is for Tom. Monica Anderson, Camp Lincoln Road. This road, you term it the backage road, that's been discussed for years. And then I was here one night when Mark Ron, presented kind of a preliminary proposal for a concept for the development itself. And that would probably require additional needs. And so I'm just curious, so there's that project itself hasn't been given a green light for anything. So they're kind of intertwined, right? Depending on the needs based on the development there and also the current need now that's been talked about for years. Is that a fair statement?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question is, when we spoke about roads, it seems like in Nisswa, it's kind of rural or urban, the way the roads are described. Is that correct?
Largely, obviously, urban would be your downtown area and rural would be something more like Upper Roy Lake Road.
Got it.
However, what you're going to see probably going forward is a blend of that in spots. For instance, on Upper Roy Lake Road, the topography we have to deal with, there are areas that benefit from curb and gutter to prevent shoulder erosion. So you'll see small areas on a road like that that are going to get curb and gutter, where most of it will still remain rural section.
Because one thing, and I'm not saying we've got other things to do, but Pequot has an interesting map that is quite detailed about different categorizations of the roads. And I don't know how long they've had that in place, but it's quite helpful to see like where are those dirt roads, where are those 22-foot roads, where are the Camp Lincoln roads, where are the, you know what I mean? Like some kind of picture for our little town
Sure.
would be helpful at some point.
So we don't have a picture of it, but what we do have going back all the way to 1981 is they did a road survey. And so it's a big spreadsheet. And it lists the right of way, how much of it is the pavement width, the length of it. And then we updated that, when was that? Probably 2015-ish.
Mhm. Great.
But it's not a map. So could that be done? Sure.
Anyway, just curious if we had one of those. Thanks.
Okay, anything else for Tom? Oh,
So my name's Fred Heidman. Tom, so I know that, the way streets and sewer and that work, oftentimes, especially sewer, there's a fund that kind of builds. Are there some funds that have been building that can go towards this liner replacement and that sort of thing? Or do you anticipate it being more of a outside of that sort of thing charge?
So what we'll be likely paying for it with is what's through the PFA. So it'll be a low interest loan, most likely is what the community will use. We have been starting to save for other areas of the sewer system. For instance, some of you may know that we're updating our lift station 1. We have been able to put away enough money to where we won't have to bond or borrow for that project. However, the liners are not one of those items. It will be probably going forward.
Go ahead, Councilmember Song.
Did we get any update from Weisenegger Engel on insurance, even though it's a
So
30-plus-year-old product?
So I don't have anything official, but the insurance is likely not going to cover it. The reason being is the liner is 35 years old. In the original spec book that we have from the 1991 construction, they were given a lifespan of 20 years. He did try to look at it a couple different ways, and either way, the league is pushing back, saying that it's probably too old to insure.
Is everybody satisfied that we've talked through key public works issues? Roads, sewers? Okay, well, let's actually jump next to the parks. And we'll turn it over to Amber Moon Peterson, our Park and Recreation Director, to give an update on everything related to the parks with the city.
Awesome, thank you. I'll start with our 2 active projects we have going on right now. The first being the community center. Some of you may have already seen it. It received some internal updates there with the carpet, new bathrooms, some with the plumbing, water heater, and the last thing that is on that list is some siding repairs that we have from some animal damage. So that project is going to be wrapping up here soon. The other active project we have is the Gull Lake Trail project. So this is our second phase of the Gull Lake Trail project on County Road 77. When we bid that project, those bids came in well under what we expected. And so we had some extra money that we are putting in a bathroom out at Nisswa Lake Park. So there's some additional amenities that are going to be happening there in the next month or so. So we're kind of in our final punch list of that trail, trying to get that bathroom installed. That's all new infrastructure out there, power, well, all of those things. So it's pretty heavy lift here in June. So those are our current projects that we have going on. And then City Park, you guys have probably heard about that one over and over and over again for the last 5+ years. Where we're at now is City Council did transfer $500,000 to Parks back in December. And the Parks Commission identified the playground as the top priority. And they are using currently that $500,000 as matching dollars for a DNR grant. So we submitted that grant back in March. We will not find out until later this month if we were awarded the funds or not. So we are kind of in a holding pattern on that one. While we find out the answer to the grant, we continue to go through some playground revisions. So there'll be some further community engagement as we go through designs, trying to get some more feedback on that, on what the community wants in their playground. And then we'll kind of go from there. At this point, we don't have the fundraising happening to include things like pickleball was kind of the big other amenity to be added. And then we have some major decisions coming with the hockey rink. So if you've been following this project, we have very aging infrastructure there. And we don't necessarily have a plan yet for how to go forward with that. So those are kind of the park updates to kind of go a little bit along with the sidewalks that Tom talked about. That does overlap with some of the park plan directives on pedestrian circulation, pedestrian safety. Nisswa has also partnered in with a bunch of local communities for a safety plan, which behind you as you leave, there's some signs up where you guys can share your input. And this is throughout the county, not just Nisswa. But you can put in some feedback as to sidewalks, locations, trails, things like that. So I encourage you guys to share your feedback on biking and pedestrian safety. So those are some of the big things we got going on.
Okay, thanks, Amber. Councilmember Fraley, do you have anything you want to add or supplement to what Amber said, since you are the liaison to the parks?
I always have something to say about the parks. I think the committee that's been working on this, the past committee, the people that were on it, I know Paula West isn't on there anymore, but they've done a lot of great work. They brought a lot of things forward. We've had input not only from the year-round residents, but from summer residents. The hope is we had looked at the lost, but that didn't go anywhere. So right now we are, a fundraising committee is no longer disbanded. I'm not sure what happened there. So we're hoping that we can get the playground done. It's amazing on what these pieces of equipment cost now. We also have on the committee now Doug Imholt, who's from Detroit Lakes. He has a lot of good input. He was on the council there for, I think, 25 years. So he has, how to helping out with different ways that we can do fundraising. So we're hoping that the playground will go in and that we can get enthusiasm and people will be excited so that we can get into pickleball, of course. Also the hockey rink, yes, that basically is not being chilled or anything. There's safety issues with the lighting and the concrete that's cracking and broken. As we go into that, someone said, well, why can't you just cut a chunk of the concrete out and replace it? You can't because of the cooling pipes that are in there. And so a concern is, for me, is the possibility, are those pipes, have they been, I'll say injured? Have they been ruptured in any way? And so did we do a pressure test?
We did.
And there was no problem, correct?
Yeah, the pressure's holding.
Right.
currently.
So that was a plus, but it's just a matter of time before that could be a problem. And then it'll be really costly. But no, they've done a great job, and hopefully we can continue. Also, if you haven't been out to the Camp Lincoln Road Park, and don't ask me to pronounce it, it's between the lakes. It's a beautiful place. If you haven't been out there, please go out there. Thank you.
So what questions do we have, if any, for Amber as it relates to the parks?
Mr. Landers, community center question. Any thought of equipping the community center with live streaming?
Through some of these meetings internally as staff, we've kind of talked about the various capabilities there. It's not currently a budget item, but we haven't begun budgeting for the next cycle.
And any idea on what we're talking about as far as cost?
Nope. Currently, we're still a few years out from updating the AV equipment, just based on the CIP. But if we want to do anything in the interim or what those functionalities would be, we'd probably look at as a whole system.
Does anyone else have anything related to the parks? Have people here seen the different playground concept designs for redoing the playground at Nisswa City Park? Amber, are they able to locate it online anywhere, or would they just come to City Hall if they haven't seen the renderings and would like to look at?
We do have renderings here at City Hall. They all go, every dialogue goes through the Parks Commission. So at all those meetings and all of those packets, you will see all versions and renderings. And then we have them here at City Hall for further questions.
We have a video that was created by that
Conceptual, yep.
group, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that's something
That is online, yes.
Is that on YouTube?
It's on our
On our
website.
So
It's
there
on-
is something on the website?
Yes, that's conceptual of the whole park concept, not
If it all came
specific
to fruition.
playground design, correct? There is a video of the community center updates on the website as well under the community center page.
Yeah, and has everyone had a chance to see the updates to the community center yet? It's very nice. I actually have a question, and it was something I think that, I can't remember, Councilmember Hall, if it was last summer or fall, when they were doing that Gull Lake Trail addition along County Road 77, that there were some kind of areas that, yeah, the fence and areas that could have been improved. And then I had a resident reach out to me this winter saying there was a sinkhole or whatnot on that trail. And I know just because of your background in that industry, when I went out there and met you, and we did that walkthrough, you helped explain things very well. And I'm just curious if,
I'll say we're in our
update.
final punch list stage. That sinkhole has been repaired. There was some damage over the winter to the trail. That's been repaired. They did review the wall after some concerns, one of the retaining walls. After concerns were brought up, the structural engineer came out and that was cleared to be structurally sound. And so right now they have completed the remaining fence portion, which was a dialogue that council had last October. And so we're pretty much in the final stretch of restoration.
do you have
Yeah,
anything you want to
no,
add?
it's looking good. WSN has been on top of those punch list things that were identified. And they're doing a nice job on making sure they're getting done.
Anything else on parks? Okay, well, let's move to Stephen, to planning and zoning, and what we had put here, and I don't know how closely you guys might be following this, but in the Nisswa City ordinances, chapter 20, there were ordinance revisions that have gone through a process, and thought Stephen could high level that. And then after that, we'll talk about another issue under your area.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, I am Stephen Timlin, city planner for City of Nisswa. I do all the planning and zoning permits for land use permits, shoreline alteration permits, septic installations, and things like that. The city has taken great efforts in the last handful of years to reevaluate Chapter 20 of our land use and development ordinances. For example, what, where, how close to relevant setbacks, how big can things be? We should, I think, celebrate the recent ordinance revision that we just accomplished last month in May. We have made things a little bit more flexible for landowners like yourselves to come in and get a land use permit for an accessory structure as one example. We loosened that up a little bit for you guys. One of those examples would be we now no longer require a permit for a structure that's up to 120 square feet. It simply needs to meet all setbacks and impervious surface coverage. So where you would have previously had to come in and get a compliance inspection for your septic system to build a 10 by 12 coop meeting all setbacks, or not just a chicken coop, but like an accessory structure, shed, decks, things like that. Now there's a little bit more flexibility where you no longer need to get that inspected. So I look at that as a huge victory for the city. Other things on my department, if you look around outside, summer's in full bloom, so is the construction season. So things are getting pretty busy, but I'm available. I brought some cards here if you guys have any developmental needs that you'd like to discuss with me about your property. I'd be more than happy to take it A to Z through that process.
Thank you, Stephen. Councilmember Hall, do you have anything you want to add on as the planning and zoning liaison to the revisions or anything else in the department?
I guess the only thing I'll say about the revisions is that didn't start with Stephen or myself. I mean, that started before I was even on council. Really Bethany, our prior planning and zoning person, was really the driver behind it, helping get stuff updated. If people had actually spent some time in there reading the ordinances, there were multiple places with too many places to count where it contradicted itself or just hadn't been updated in some places 40, 50 years. And so the headway Stevens made is great. Also throughout this process too, Chris Pence that runs the Crow Wing County planning and zoning ordinances, he has been our subcontractor to help us through this process with every step of the way to give more people some insight on kind of what's gone on and timelines and how the process has gone.
Any questions, input, comments, feedback on planning and zoning and the ordinance amendments? I do have a quick question because I'd like to get a pulse from the folks that are here tonight. So a resident had reached out to me, well, multiple residents have, but most recently a gentleman named Mr. Peterson. He has a garage and he wants to add on to the garage, but the way that our planning and zoning ordinances are written, he would not be able to add on to the garage. He would have to actually build a separate structure 10 feet away, or he'd have to come for a, am I saying this wrong? A variance. And that was one that, if you don't mind just talking about that provision in the ordinances.
Yep.
Just so people can understand, and then I'd love to just get feedback from the community.
Absolutely. So the city has a section in chapter 20, section 20-93 that structures are accessory structure requirements, size limitations, setback limitations, the new language that is allowing those smaller structures without a permit. So that's the section that would house all of those requirements. Historically, the city of Nisswa has put guardrails around how big accessory structures can be on a relevant property. The base footprint of them cannot exceed the principal structure size of the house on the lot without a conditional use permit. And then when you get over 1,200 square feet of size, you also need to have vegetative screening surrounding that structure and a setback of 30 feet, where otherwise 10 feet would be the requirement. So in this particular individual's scenario, let's picture a 30 by 40 garage that is about 15 feet away from the property line. The notion to expand that would result in a footprint that's larger than 1,200 square feet. And so we would need the expansion to be handled through the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment under a variance, deviating from that new 30-foot requirement because of the expansion of that structure. I wouldn't say that it's impossible to get a permit for it. You just have to follow the right process, where your city planner and myself would not be able to issue an administrative over-the-counter permit for that.
And in Crow Wing County, do they align with how we are currently structured in that area, or do they vary?
They are much more rural oriented for their planning and zoning. And so when we looked at that section with our consultant in this most recent revision phase, he did not recommend making adjustments to that. I think because of the urban versus rural relationship of the planning and zoning dynamics that we have. With Nisswa, we have a much larger commercial sector than the county does, which can put pressure on residential development. And so in short, to your question, pointedly, no, the county does not handle it that way, but I think that there's other nuanced reasons of why. So.
And so I guess the question, the reason I asked about this is because, as I mentioned, a resident had reached out to me. I don't know if you, I'm pointing at you, Bobby, if you dealt with some of it as well. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Bobby Kochever, Upper Roy Lake Road, and I know some of you very, very well. And it was the last couple of years have been a huge learning process for planning and zoning. And so I'm very pleased to hear that you're loosening up some of these things, because I did listen during one council meeting, or maybe it was planning and zoning, where an older gentleman just wanted a little lean-to, and it was going to cost him triple just to be able to do his little lean-to, and that made my heart sad. But for me personally, when we were going through building our pole shed, I will tell you that when we were working with the contractors, we're so close to Lakeshore, and I think sometimes they weren't sure that we were in Nisswa. So then when we'd say, well, this is the city of Nisswa, I would get this reaction of, oh, well, that's a little different, or they do things differently, and so I don't know then if, when you were looking at this the 20 ordinance revisions, do we do a comparison of how we are compared to some of the cities around us? Because why would these contractors, as soon as I said, oh, I live in Nisswa, which I'm very proud of, and then I got it several times, you guys, that they were just saying, oh yeah, this isn't going to be easy. Nothing is easy in Nisswa. And I don't know, I think we need to pay attention to that, because I don't want that to be our reputation.
I wholeheartedly agree with that and can totally empathize and sympathize with that. So the city of Nisswa has historically, again, taken a step to be very wordy in its ordinances that it's adopted. I think that as a community, we need to be careful as we review regulatory language and go towards actions of defining something. You can very easily over-define something to where now you've created this box that is yay big, and now every single project that comes through to get an over-the-counter permit has to slam dunk through that little itty bitty hole. So as we go through future ordinance revisions, it'd be, my take to try to zoom out a little bit, do that comparative analysis. This most recent revision was heavily emphasized on a comparative analysis between ourselves and Crow Wing County. Trying to harmonize those shoreline regulations between municipalities that exist as an invisible line on a lakeshore. When you're out on a pontoon, you might not necessarily know that, okay, over here is Nisswa and over here is Lakeshore, or over here is Lake Edward Township. Realistically, we want all of those regulations to be pretty close to each other without stark differences. So yeah, I empathize when you say that contractors have been reluctant to work within the city. And I'm working very hard to build that trust back.
I guess on this particular rule, it was really put in place by nobody up here, by some previous councils, not that long ago on one project that happened in town. So that's the history of it. And so, no, I'm not going to say what project it is, but there was one project that was talked about quite a bit over that time frame in town, and it honestly impacted one particular council person more than others at the time. The rule was put in place. So really what's happened is the pendulum was over here, and then it went as far the opposite direction as it possibly could in this area. And I'm not sure that either one maybe is right, but I definitely would say that it still needs to be addressed and looked at in this certain area. And people on both sides of this issue, no, let's keep it really strict, let's not. If we look then, since the rule has gone into place, and if somebody would do a deep dive and dig through this, then everyone that comes in and goes like you did, for the most part, through a variance, they're granted. I'm going to say like 98% of them are granted to still do what we had traditionally done. And then from my viewpoint, it's like, well, if we're ultimately letting people do what the rule used to say that they could do, all we're making people do is jump through about 6 months of pain, heartache, and additional expense to get what they used to be able to have in town. And so some of the heartache in the town and the building and the people, as you go around, you look at the neighbors throughout the different community, and the classic thing is, well, my neighbor has, somebody down this street has, and I don't have the answers, but I think that there still needs to be some common ground talked about in this particular rule, something more looked at, because I still don't agree where it's currently at. But I don't think that it maybe needs to go all the way back to where it was. But like you can attest to, the amount of time, work, energy, and effort for a landowner or homeowner to come in and get a permit to do something on their town or on their property that they own, pay taxes for, there's all this other criteria put in place, setbacks, pervious coverage, restrictions, that cover this. With all that being in place, it just creates a lot of unnecessary heartache, headache, and expense that has been brought on. So that would be my input, my insight on it, kind of where it originated from, where we're at. But I do believe with this particular rule, it needs looked at a little bit more.
I'm curious, yeah, and I'm curious what you guys think. If anyone has strong perspectives on it one way or another of looking at doing things, as Councilmember Hall mentioned, maybe differently, or keeping things as the ordinance currently stands, or maybe this, we're getting too in the weeds on this specific topic. But
Well, this is a topic near and dear to my heart because when I came back and decided to live up here, I went through maybe at least three planning and zoning people. And I heard a lot of stories like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that, or same thing from contractors. And I came in and there was a wonderful person here at the time. And she said, oh, yeah, you can do this. And she walked me through what you can and can't do. And I did spend a lot of money and I did avoid variances, but it was a process. And I think that you've really stabilized it, Stephen, and I appreciate you. And you were very helpful to help me understand a few things that I'm thinking about now. But I also want to say, and with all the development plans in the future, and we know we're going to grow, and I'm curious about what you said, Joe, about the variances, because I was told by an interim planning and zoning guy, you will never get a variance, so don't even try. And I'm going, dude, you haven't met me yet. I get her done when there's a way to do it, right? But anyway, so I didn't go a variance route, but if you were to have a series of situations where multiple variances were needed, either heights of a building or whatever they may be, what is the current process and criteria for deciding, is this something we're going to say yay or nay to? Or how do you go about that? I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, I can speak on that. Typically, I don't know which interim city planner that you had spoken with, but in the P&Z world, variances should be hard to get. They should be only gotten when you have a practical difficulty that you can demonstrate, when there's something unique to the property that causes the need for a deviation. For example, you have a well over here and a septic system over there, so your house can't go in either of those locations. It has to be here. So they should be harder to attain. That being said, it doesn't mean that they're impossible to attain. It just means that you have to really think about your project, evaluate other options of where could your development go on your property. Could you put this shed over here, meeting all setbacks? If so, that's where it should go. But you try to harmonize that with environmental protections. For example, you might have not just actual infrastructure there that you need to avoid, but you might have that as a pristine wooded area of your property that you'd really rather not cut those trees down. So I like to take that grain of salt forward with those considerations and then provide that logic and understanding to my planning commission as we go through things. But variances, if you have constantly getting a variance applied for building height, that's an opportunity for you to evaluate maybe our building height standard needs to be revisited. So you can pattern those variances and those needs in the community as we go through future ordinance revisions to say, hey, last year we had 9 variances for accessory structures larger than 1,200 square feet, closer than 30 feet required in our ordinance. Maybe we need to lessen that 30 feet to 15 feet. I like to think of our land use and development ordinance as a living document. We should be evaluating that as often as we need to fit the needs of the community.
One other thing that I'll add is the only thing with planning and zoning in Nisswa, the only consistent thing with the planning and zoning has been the inconsistencies. And so I'm not sure how many residents know this about the planning and zoning, but Maggie, somebody in the last 8-9 years, we've had 7 or 8 employees in Stephen's role. So I don't know if the public knows that. So it has been a revolving door of people in that position. Now, the rules haven't always changed in that time, but because there's a new person in there interpreting the rules, that has created a lot of angst. And well, this last person said I couldn't do it. Well, the new person interprets it differently. And so that has gone on. Also, too, we've had some great people in the roles over the years here too, but when we do have good people in the roles and they do leave and they do say to the incoming people, hey, you're up against an impossible job. The rules don't line, they don't match. that's a pretty big indicator that there's something fundamentally wrong, not with the people, but within the system of the city. And that's a direct quote from past people working in this department. And so the public needs to know that, the staff needs to know that. And also that is why we need to spend time doing these ordinance changes, revisions, look at the county, go to the county and say, hey, we're gonna change this rule and yeah, it might be okay for a large group of people, but as a whole, it makes a mess. And you have to understand that and see that as a bigger picture, you know. Myself personally, I deal with planning and zoning all over the state. I deal with 40 plus municipalities on a weekly basis, permits all over. Over the years, Nisswa is probably in the top 2 or 3 most challenging places to talk to a customer and say, well, I think we can do this. Last month we could. There's a new person in there this month. And so it is a real thing for contractors out there to tell homeowners, we don't have any idea what the ruling's going to be. It's going to be a coin flip in Nisswa, where we could go down the street to other places like Lakeshore, where it has been much more consistent over the time period, but also there has been a person in that role for 30 years over there. And so that is a key factor to all this within the city of Nisswa that the public needs to know and understand. And Stephen's trying to bring some stability to it and look at these revisions. But without knowing some of this history, you don't know why these rules are here. You don't know why some of the battles or struggles happen. But you have to understand a little bit of this history that's gone on in this town, in this area.
Any questions on that topic or input? Otherwise, one other item that falls under planning and zoning, and I guess public safety to some extent, for those of you that weren't here at the meetings, there have been discussions around, if you're familiar with Grandview's property, a public access down at the end of Woodward. And so I think, was it at our last council meeting?
Yep. May, there was a special on May.
The
12th.
special meeting, there was discussion around, Grandview had a little temporary like shed structure that they do, you know, some of their water, like life jacket, different rentals out of. But it was sitting partly in the public access, and then there were some barricades or are barricades across there. And so there was a lot of feedback from the community, and in particular, a lot of the property owners that live on East and West Linden, which for those of you that aren't familiar, when you actually go into Grandview, those are city streets. That's not Grandview private roads. So when you drive right in and come off the roundabout, if you go straight to the end and turn left, that's East Linden. If you go over like towards, like you're going to the spa, and then let's say you went down the hill towards where the beach is there and you turn right, that's West Linden. So for now, we voted as council, and it was a 3-2 vote. So I had to be the tiebreaker on that one, to not allow Grandview to put the shed there for the moment, but to make sure that the barricades for public safety reasons were there, but not infringing on people's ability to feel welcome or use it. But I don't know if anyone wants, Stephen, if you want to chime in, and then I know there's some folks here from the area, if they want to share any additional thoughts and input.
Sure.
But one quick second, before we get too far into this, was Grandview notified? I just don't see Grandview here, that this was gonna
Yeah.
be, oh, Don is, okay. I just wanted to make sure in
Yep.
fairness.
So I'm going to keep my interpretation pretty general, 30,000 foot view type topic. So back in the day, and we're talking 100 years ago, when a lot of the land in not just Nisswa, but our county and our state as a whole was platted, there were different regulations, maybe less shoreland rule in effect at the time. So you'll see a lot of those historical plats, for example, this one here, has accesses that have been dedicated to the public for public use forever that go straight north and south and right up to the shore of lakes. Whether they're 50 feet or 20 feet of width, there could be even trails on a plat that are still existent out there that have not been utilized for the intent that they were made for 120 years ago. Some of them are being actively used by members of the public, but those dedications are very important. And it should be noted that Shoreland Rule no longer allows for roads and avenues such as these things to get platted right up to the shore anymore. For good reason. They tend to generate some consternation and animosity as to what their intended use was. When you fast forward to where we are now, looking at a plat from 1916, we're all looking at it like, what was the actual intended use here? And so keeping it from that 30,000 foot view, it generates problems when you start talking about how do we use this now? Should it be intended that a road goes right up to the shore of Gull Lake? I would say probably not. I think that that would be unreasonable. Can you put structures on a property that you don't have fee title to? Well, probably not either. You might need permission from that. And so we've gone through that analysis at the May meeting of what would provisional approval and permitting pathway look like for this particular structure at that access. And without diving too far into the weeds, happy to field any questions that anybody might have about those things.
Does anyone have any comments, inputs, or question about this particular topic? No? Okay. All right, Stephen, anything else on your end? And does anyone have any? Yeah.
I was at the last meeting, and again, I live on Upper Roy, so this really, I was just intrigued by how many people were here from the community speaking up. And it was very unanimous from my seat that the general public did not want Grandview to have access to public property. I thought it was very telling when the one woman said, if I want to build a shed on that public property for my kids' stuff, can I come here to the city and will you guys take a vote on it? And it was like, well, we all know that that answer would be unanimously no. So when this went up for a vote, I have to say, I was a little surprised to see that it was 2-2, and then I think you were the last one to vote, and then you voted based upon what public comment was, and you all are public officials, and I would think you'd be advocating for what the public wanted. So the vote surprised me. I was happy that it landed the way it did. And again, I'm sort of agnostic to what the outcome was because it doesn't affect my livelihood, but just observing what was taking place. And then when those people filed out of here, they were very disappointed in those of you that did not seem to have their best interest in mind, or that was the perception that it gave. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you.
Diane Pagachnik, I'm on County Road 13, and I do a lot with Grandview because they're on Lake Hubert with me. But I'm not for sure if I understood what you were saying, that we would try to make this work for them to have the structure on the easement, but we don't want to help people with pole buildings or added on pieces to their garages or whatever. We don't want to help them, but we want to help Grandview put a shed on part of an easement. Just trying to understand.
Sure. I think that that was the vote of discussion during the motion. I don't know which councilman or council person had started that. Typically, these structures would have to follow the proper permitting pathway. So you would first approach the staff as to, hey, I'm looking at doing X, Y, or Z on my property, and then I would vet it for what pathway it needs to take. If, for example, you were looking to put something on within a setback, for example, commercial waterfront has a 30-foot setback. If I am encountering a proposal that's proximal to that, I have a red flag that goes up in my process that says, okay, this might be a variance. And so that would be a Board of Adjustment determination. I think that when this came before council, it was to try to harmonize intent with a significant player in the community, an entity that generates a lot of tax base for the community. And as we look outside, resort season is in full swing. They do bring a lot of commerce and business to the community. And so my recommendation on the 19th, coming out of the 12th meeting, which I was unfortunately not able to attend, was trying to harmonize it and best preserve best process. The vote on the 19th was to whether or not to give them provisional approval. Still to respect the ordinance requirements that this should have to go through the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment for vetting. But almost like an acknowledgement that could it work? Would it have to go through that process? Sure. And it landed, as you've stated, as a 3-2 vote for no. So not favoritism or anything. It's just how do we harmonize it when it was, you know, on the 12th about to go through or not, you know. So that was my recommendation that I brought through for that that task force that was established on the 12th. Is this process could best preserve best process and still result in a no through that best process if the Planning Commission saw a reason to deny that. But almost how do we get through this pathway? Does that make sense, Dan?
I care about the local people that they're just as important, even if they don't have a lot of money.
100%.
I mean, they pay taxes, they've been living here a long time. So that's all. It's, I know I'm not, don't want to use the word favoritism because I know you're looking at the big picture. I get that. I just want to make sure that all the common people that don't have all that money and don't own all that land are just as important when a decision comes that they want a little addition on their house. And I'm sorry, you can't do that.
Right.
You know?
I would hesitate to say, someone in the room mentioned that when they approached one of my predecessors, oh no, you'll not get a variance. Us at staff level can't really make that call. Those things that need variances, that's a higher authority than what we have. Our ordinances establish a administrative capacity to issue a permit without higher review. And so I'll say the same thing to you as I did at the downtown business meeting. You know, early engagement with myself it goes a long way for developmental plans to make sure that when you submit an application, it's as complete as possible and has the best chance of being received by that higher authority or myself administratively in an over-the-counter permit pathway. So, yeah, I would handle it the same for yourself as for anyone over here, as for any commercial business operation as well. So I try to maintain my objectivity in my analysis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any input, questions, comments, thoughts for Stephen on planning and zoning on any variety of topics? Oh, yes.
So I've been to most of these meetings with the Grandview, and it's still my understanding that we don't know whether or not that was on any public property, right? Because nobody knows.
I can talk a little bit of the chronology as I understand it. So the plat was 1916. It dedicated that corridor as a 50-foot lot. There's a little bit of uncertainty when you fast forward through time because around the time of the 40s, there was a quitclaim deed mechanism that granted the easterly 25 feet of that corridor to ETOC or Grandview Lodge. So proper way to dispense of area that's dedicated is through a vacation process. There's not great records as to whether a vacation has occurred. So is it 25 feet or is it 50 feet? I think is, you know, the point that you're getting at here. To get a formal determination, you're probably looking at 3 professional services that you would need. Real estate attorney, title examiner, or like an abstract to be created to really come up with the chronology of title and to that property. And then a surveyor to go out there once you have an answer to map it. And so when you're confronted in a position like mine with that uncertainty on the loading end of a conversation, it can create a little bit of, you know, consternation or uncertainty as you go through it. But one of the requirements for a variance application, for example, is a certificate of survey where you have one of those 3 parties that's saying the lot line is here. This is this person's property, and this is road right of way, for example. You, for example, have an application that is demonstrating where the right of way is. and your surveyor is placing that on your property. And so I, as staff, not having a surveyor license cannot, supersede those. I don't have a trump card that says, no, your surveyor is wrong. It's that determination rests on that professional's license to state, that this is or is not your property. A lot of times they have notes in their surveyor notes as to, how they came to that determination as well. So yeah, is it 25 feet? Is it 50 feet? It might take a larger party in that triangle of professionals to really answer that question affirmatively.
Are you good, Andy, or anything else? Okay. The one thing I just want to say about the item and the issue that came up with Grandview and the discussion, right? Because I had to be the tie-breaking vote in that case. And I said this, I think, at that special council meeting. I have great respect for the folks at Grandview. I've gotten to meet their leadership, and they are very hardworking, capable, collaborative people. And I know that there has been, long before me or maybe any of us here, there maybe has been kind of some push and pull with the residents in that area. But I think longer term, I've said this before, like we need to look for win-win solutions. And so to all these questions of diving in the weeds and figuring this out, it's almost like, why don't some folks just get together and almost have a committee, whether it's through the city or separate, right? Involving Grandview, involving some residents, involving some experts, and find out a way so that people feel positive on both sides, if that makes sense. Anyway, okay, let's go on. Does anyone have any specific topics they want to bring up before I jump to the next one? Okay, why don't we jump to the liquor assessment? So we have Brian here, who is our manager of spirits. Terry is the manager of the pickle, but he was not able to be here tonight. Jesse and I were both liaisons at one point on the liquor committee, which has now been disbanded. But the council did motion to engage a consulting firm called Delaney Consulting to do a deep dive analysis into the financials, the operations, the health, the opportunities, forward-looking for the city's liquor businesses, which would be the pickle and spirits. And so that report out is coming next Tuesday. We're having a special council meeting from 3 to 5 p.m. So the consultants will be driving up from the Twin Cities, and they're going to share with us their assessment and report. But Brian, did you want to make any comment specifically about the process? I know you've been interviewing or meeting with them quite a bit, and just to give an update to folk.
Sure, thank you. One thing I just want to clarify, I've been the manager for 11 years there, and we strive to do a really good job. Is there areas that we can do better in? Absolutely, just like anybody else in their job. But we do take it very seriously. So we are excited to see what Delaney comes back with as far as recommendations. Hopefully, they will have some great areas that they can advise us on how to maybe streamline something or make a little extra profit. Because we're paying them about $80,000. So I'm anticipating that we'll get some good information out of them. But with that being said, I do want to make sure that we clarify, for the last 11 years and even before that, my previous manager, that Spirits in Nisswa has been a very successful business for the city of Nisswa. For the last 11 years, I'm not sure about when Ron was managing, but we averaged between $300,000 and $450,000 in profit. And each year, out of that profit, we give $245,000 to the city to lower the levy for the citizens of Nisswa. And I know there has been some talk on some people are saying, hey, should we really have a liquor store in our city or not that is run by the city? And that's significant numbers. If we were to not have that, property taxes would go up, and I think it would be a great loss to our community. Some of the areas that we strive to do, we're always striving to have really good customer relations, and we want to have fair pricing, a friendly environment, and for both the customers and the employees. And we want to obviously make some profit in there. So with that, we're excited once again to, with Delaney to see what they come up with. And we're also, right now, we're going through some challenging times with our lease. We've had great relations with the Schaefer family, right? It's a little rocky right now, but we're hoping that we can resolve all those issues and have a really good relationship in the future. That is all I have for report.
Councilmember Zahn, do you have anything you want to add? Since we've had multiple different liquor committee meetings and discussions, and obviously next Tuesday is going to be a really important council meeting. So I would encourage you all, if you have an interest in it, please consider attending or watching, because we're all going to hear the information at the same time, and then we'll need to think about that, digest it, and then potentially make some decisions.
I mean, listen, $70,000 is a lot of money. It's a salary. It's maybe 2% of what our total budget is, and paid for through the profits from these two enterprises. I think it's also important to know what our role is here, including Mayor Carnahan, what these folks' roles are. These are two revenue generating enterprises that are hospitality and restaurant services, obviously, through the bar and off sale. But we do not specialize. We don't have anybody up here on this council that specializes in that. We do not have anybody besides the specific manager, Brian, and the specific manager, Terry, for those two enterprises. The liquor committee, I think, for the 4 years and a couple months that I've been on your council, I think I've been on the liquor committee as its liaison or pro tem under Jennifer for a while, for almost my entire time on this council. We have not had regularly scheduled meetings. I can take responsibility for that, I suppose. We have not had public meetings. We have not had the ability to have transparent and what I would like to consider sometimes maybe more faster decision meetings to be able to make sound choices each step of the way, as we are more able to do in a open setting like this. And why is that important to me? To see the committee disbanded and go with a consultant route, kind of all snowballed into a quick, short time frame, is because there's so much potential there. And Brian is absolutely right. The levy contribution piece is huge. We had a workshop, Mayor Carnahan, I think it was last spring, fall. I brought up a point to the council. What if, hypothetically, Minnesota liquor exclusivity just vanishes in state legislature, and now all of a sudden, City of Nisswa, or I should say Spirits of Nisswa for that matter, isn't the only liquor store in town anymore? What happens to our revenues and margin then? Your guess is exactly where my guess is. And how does that affect that contribution to the levy? Well, what's 245,000 in comparison to our overall budget right now? You're talking almost, I think, 7%.
Approximately $25,000 equals 1 point on the levy. So a $225,000 transfer is significant.
10%. You guys, I think everybody in this room understands the levy percentages enough, right? And 10% is an ugly number. Last year, we were able to achieve a great decrease. And that's not going to happen every year. But moral of the point is, we want to be able to provide our staff and then their staff within their enterprises the best support possible, because we're not professionals in it. We believe that there's opportunity for improvement there. Any business owner should. You're all the business owners of these two enterprises. And I think just from my conversations, and I think Jennifer's too, with Delaney, they are very aggressive. And they're very confident that where these two enterprises are at, that there is a lot of potential to be able to get them on a better path forward, to provide more contribution to their profitability, which then goes back into the City of Nisswa's coffers. And Flora, that's her name, right? Flora Delaney, in the interview that I had with her, made a comment, you know, typically we get hired to come into these situations when these municipality liquor enterprises are failing to the point where they are trying to get some sort of determination on how to liquidate the entire business. She stated to me that City of Nisswa is nowhere even near that point, but there is revenue slide. There is profitability erosion. And we're coming off of some really good years that Brian had with COVID, and we always try to not have that be the benchmark, of course. People were home and they were drinking more, just plain and simple. But they weren't going to the pickle either, right? So have some faith that just as I'm trying to have, and I think Mayor Carnahan has too, since we've been a part of this liquor committee for quite some time, and Joe was even on it for a bit too, that this consultant service is going to be an investment, not just a flat out expense, and it's going to help turn additional revenue and margin that's going to make it a worthwhile investment. If it doesn't, I'll eat my words. It's 70 grand that's been spent. I hope we make 10x that in return over the next 5-10 years. And we can all determine together through public input how to best manage that and support our community. So.
Any question, Bonnie?
Bonnie Johnson. This is a very simplistic question. I just do not know. Will Delaney come back with recommendations for the pickle as far as priorities of need that, for example, leaky roofs, refrigeration systems that do not work? Heaven forbid our poor, Jesse has had to hear me yak at this, the seats that are not only dangerous, but are an embarrassment to the city of Nisswa. But I understand priorities of leaky roofs too. Will they come back and give us some direction as far as, because from my viewpoint, you know, I've been going to the pickle for 40 years. It's iconic. I mean, lots of people, whether you're in Florida or Mexico or whatever, they know the pickle. It is synonymous sometimes with Nisswa, whether we want it to be or not. So that is my question is, are we going to have a direction for how to spend money and improve it?
Well, we're all going to go there after this town hall, right, Bonnie? And if Terry would have been here, he would have had those pickle nickels for all of us for participation tickets or coupons. I asked that same question. I do not believe in the original RFP that it was infrastructure considerations to be taken into effect. Now, I asked during my interview with them, you've been in those buildings, both buildings. You've interviewed the staff in those businesses. Flora came into my office, and before I could even shake her hand, I could smell that she was at the pickle factory. And I told her, I'm like, you just came from the pickle factory. She goes, what gave it away? I'm like, now imagine what that staff goes through working an 8-10 hour shift there, 5-6 days a week for Mike Lonnie, almost 40 years, and Terry floating around there, right? So I asked them if they could potentially take some additional time to consider in there and provide some suggestions on how they would go about any infrastructure, specifically for the pickle, right? Because in years past, we've had conversations, very sensitive ones, because pickle is a legendary enterprise, and we all agree that we love it as it is. It is iconic, but there's also serious problems in there. There's a leaking roof. Anybody that goes there in the spring knows that those beer buckets are not just for holding a 5 bottle with ice. It's also to collect the melting snow and ice that's leaking through the roof. We have mold in the back cooler that has developed, and I wish Terry was here to clarify me, but he showed me it's developing between the insulation and the wall. That's because it's 40 years old. A plethora of other issues, the stools, and Terry brought the stools up to us as a council. I think a month after we hired Delaney, and the council, I think, motioned we requested to have Terry and Spirits, I guess, for that matter, hold off on any additional expenditures until we get a report, right?
But we did, just one quick note on that. We did actually give direction as a council in 2025 that they could go ahead and order new stools.
Yeah,
And
right.
it never happened a year ago. So when it came back up to us, we were already, as Councilmember Zahn mentioned, we had the consultant hired. So it made sense to just let's wait till the report.
Right. And try, I know those chairs are tough. And if you've seen the new ones, they're great. Well, he had two different options. I think the one that they preferred, the brown ones, yeah, or it was like a Cadillac. So we'll see what they come back with on that. And it's important because, what can we do to preserve that building as long as possible without having the greatest spend? There's been conversation of, and not serious ones, but it's ideas, right? You have to have ideas. Well, what if the building is condemned at some point? Or what if we go through a infrastructure quote and it's over 50 or 75% of the value of the building, or maybe building a new building, right? It may not be this council or the next. It could be 3-4 councils down the road, but we all know buildings don't last forever. That's going to come up. And at that point, it's going to have to be considered. So this report, I believe, Bonnie, is going to help us maybe be able to start planning for what does the future hold, not just for that asset right next door, the physical one, but perhaps also the situation with the Spirits of Nisswa in the lease building that they have right now, and what could we do there too. So I think there'll be more to come in this calendar year that you'll all be privy to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very, like I said, a very important meeting, special council meeting next Tuesday, again, from 3 to 5 here. And I would think that the information, their assessment will probably come out in the packet beforehand. So that will be available to everybody to look at online too, ahead of the meeting. So we encourage participation and attendance at that meeting. Any other questions related to the liquor businesses, the consultant? No, okay. All right, next, I had on here a city administrator search update. And I can turn it over to Maggie to go over that, but as you all know, we've been without a full-time city administrator for well over a year. We engaged a consulting firm called SCSC, and they started the search. Council interviewed, and I think we were mostly aligned on the first choice. And then unfortunately, that individual chose not to relocate here from Wisconsin. So the search goes on, and I believe Maggie might have an update on that.
I will say a brief update. Let's see. So we have posted for the position of the city administrator / city clerk position. It is open until July 1st, I believe yes, the last date is July 1st. SCSC will be doing their background checks and kind of their first initial interviews and phone calls before the final selection comes to the council. Let's see, interviews are tentatively scheduled for August 18th, the week of, and then hopefully over the next week or so, we can work on negotiations if there are any with an applicant that we'd like to hire. I did get an update this week that we have 4 people that have applied in the first week. So I think that's a positive.
Any questions for Maggie? Input, comments, thoughts? Okay. Actually, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Szymanski. If you have any update you'd like to give everyone as it relates to the Nisswa Police Department. I have to say, I think they're great. I did a ride along with Officer Hines the other Friday. We actually ran into Councilmember London on the side of the road, on the side of 371, as one of the calls that we got while I was on the ride along. Cause I'm like, I think that's Councilmember London. He's like, is it? Anyway, I rode along for 3 hours, and I have to say I was highly impressed. Officer Hines was very professional. He took time to explain to me, different things and how he considers stops and the intricacies of that. But I probably will go back out with him this summer on a Saturday between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. He suggested, to get a little bit more action. But I'll turn it over to Chief Szymanski.
You never know where you'll find Bruce, so.
Bruce, were you lost?
I don't have a whole lot for updates or projects going on. One thing we have been doing is attending weekly meetings. We're getting a new records management system, which is countywide. So they're kind of driving that, and we're giving them our input and helping work through that and kind of form the program. So been working on that. We're coming into our busy season, so it's kind of go time for us. Call volume goes way up now, and it's just keeping up with the times and filling shifts. So we are in the very preliminary stages of looking at possibly getting another K-9. We just kind of started going down those avenues, looking at options. Officer Hines is very passionate about that and drug enforcement, so he's been one of his goals that he's looking at. Right now, we can get most of that funded by grants and other programs. So be very little, if any, impact as far as budgeting there. We will certainly come back to all of you at a future date when we're ready to move forward with that stuff. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions or concerns.
Sandy Potoff, 6053 Shady Acres Court. I was just curious, can you talk a little bit about, clearly there's a huge variability in the workload between on-season and off-season. How do you handle that, and do the types of calls you get change in the summer versus the off-season?
The types don't really change. It's more the amount of it. Seasonally, we get obviously a lot more stuff related to the tourism, cabin related type stuff, noise complaints, dogs left in cars in the summer, with all the shopping and events in town. So, but for the most part, the types pretty much stay the same all year. It's just volume goes way up in the summer. So.
Do you want to just briefly touch on, I think you had mentioned it at the downtown business meeting about the presence in downtown Nisswa, especially during this high season? I think I had texted you about the squad car.
Yep. So in the summer months, we'll be out doing a lot more foot patrol downtown too. Having cars out in the area just for a visual presence as well. So I think every little bit helps. People that are looking to do bad, if they see us out and about, it's good potential to change their mind. So, and just to touch on that too, if you do see something, doesn't look right, seems strange, please give us a call. We would, rather come check it out and have it be nothing than not get a call and then find out a day or two or a week later that it was something, and then have to go back and try to track things down. So.
Councilmember London, do you have anything you want to add as the liaison to public safety?
Yeah, the police department appears to be up and running good. The monthly activity report seems to be very adequate. A lot of variety of calls and stuff. They do a few drug arrests, drug interdiction, DWI enforcement. And the nice thing that I see is a lot of warning tickets. That goes a long way when you stop somebody, you were speeding, but thank you for having your seatbelt on. Please drive safe. Enjoy yourself while you're up in Nisswa. And it's a little interaction, with the people to get together with the police department, ask them some questions, get some directions. I've seen squads downtown. Equipment looks real good. The uniforms are good. These, police officers up here, they've got a lot to do. Summers here. Reports are very well done. They got a lot of responsibility. Their job is very, very dangerous. 371 is a major corridor, a lot of drug traffic. And, the next car you stop, you don't know what you're going to find. And they could have a gun and stuff like that. But you, the public here, I want to thank you all for coming here tonight and sharing your interest and concern here. But you people are the eyes and the ears for the police department and public safety here. And, you notice anything that's out of the ordinary, something in your neighborhood, your neighbors are gone for the weekend, something like that, you see somebody poking around, don't hesitate, call them. The response time is absolutely excellent. And I think they do a wonderful job. I'm a retired police officer myself. And from what I'm seeing up here, you can all be very proud of this police department. Any questions at all?
Well, I want to thank the police department because I am not used to having an alarm system. And of course, someone that was helping me at the house set it off this winter. And they were perfect. They were fast to react, even when they set it up the second time. So I want to thank you very much for, you were even trying to stop them, but they were there before I even got a call to say it's a false alarm, etc. And I do want to thank you. I also have a question though. This was, maybe someone can remember this, but this was probably 5 years ago. And I know it was during the off season in the winter, but we had a police officer that stopped at the house and just introduced themselves and says, I'm kind of your watch person for your area. And they introduced themselves and we got a card. I don't know if you've ever done that again, but I really like that, just knowing that I got to meet somebody that I hadn't met and they were covering their area. So just wanted to share that and say thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, that's one other thing, and no, that's very nice. When you see these officers in your neighborhood, don't hesitate to approach them, wave them down, talk to them, get to know them and that, and tell them how much you appreciate them being in your neighborhood and that, and let them know that they're welcome anytime.
Well, he's not always welcome in my neighborhood. Every time I see him, I'm like, get out of here. It's too narrow of a road.
I think as well, if I'm not mistaken, we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of when Chief Szymanski was promoted into the chief's role. So thank you for doing a phenomenal job over the past year. We're lucky and grateful to have you and look forward to many more.
Not a problem. I think you'll have a vote coming up in July, whether you want to keep me or not, so.
Okay, anything else on police? Okay, I put this on there with a question mark. I don't know if folks are familiar and want a brief update on the Verizon tower. Roger, I know you and Paula have been really involved with that. Bonnie, other neighbors in your area. If you guys want us to touch on that at all for everybody here? Do you want to give a brief update, Stephen?
Yep, I can do that. All right, so the topic that I think we're talking about here is the Verizon Tower. That was before a city council back in March, where an appeal was rendered based on the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustments decisions for approving a variance in a CUP earlier, or later, I should say, in 2025. That appeal was upheld. And it was brought back to the Planning Commission at its April meeting where they rescinded their motions for approval of those. Verizon has not reached back out to the city, so I have no application that would replace that. So no news at this point.
I think it's an ironic day and time that we're talking about cell tower and cell service, because if anybody in this will realize today, cell service was like out. Yeah, I was driving north to come here and they went from 5 bars around BIR right over by North Long Lake, went dead. Yeah, strange.
Okay, well, the last topic that I had just on things that council's been working on is the EDA, which is an Economic Development Authority. And I'm not sure how familiar folks are with actually what an Economic Development Authority is, what it does, and how council has gotten to the point where we are. So or do people feel like they're familiar? Because I don't want to go into the nuts and bolts of explaining if everyone feels comfortable with an Economic Development Authority. Okay, so let me start here. So there are two different options that the council could have considered. An EDC, which would have been an Economic Development like committee or commission, and that would be no different than like the Liquor Committee, the Parks Committee, right? Public Works Committee. So it's, you know, council just decides on that together, and the EDC would have really no authority or powers. An economic development authority is a very different authority, which is prescribed specifically under state statute because of the powers an economic development authority holds. An economic development authority can sue and be sued, can purchase property, can sell property, can issue bonds, would have the ability to discuss tax. It's a taxing authority for needs of whatever the EDA's goals and mission is. So because of that, the legislature prescribed it very differently under state statute. And so an economic development authority, because I know there's been some confusion on this too, even within our building, it's a confirmation appointment process by the mayor. So no different than the president of the United States appointing Supreme Court justices or cabinet secretaries, right? It's a confirmation appointment confirmation process. So that is the same thing with an EDA because of its broad swath of powers. Does that make sense? You know, an EDA can look at things like TIF districts, right? They could do general obligation bonds. They could do not to use the words that I don't like, but a sales tax, right? For a period of time to raise funds for whatever projects or goals that come about through the EDA. So from my role as being the one to appoint the folks to the EDA, I've taken this very serious, and we're trying to be very fair and very open about it. But what council established is a 7-member authority. So it's 5 members of the public and 2 members of our 5-member elected body that will make up the 7-member authority. And so when the time is there, I would then bring these appointments forward to the council. And it, again, similar to like when the president appoints people to cabinet secretaries or Supreme Court justices, right? The US senators can then take their time and interview the folks and decide, hey, I think this individual would be great. I think this one may, you know, whatever, however process they want to do it. Once I bring the names forward, and then we go into a meeting and we see if they're confirmed or not. Does that explain? I know that was kind of high level fast, just what an EDA is, what it does, and the 7-member authority that this council established. So the question, I'll go into the interview process in a minute, but the question that we've been getting in the interviews is why an EDA and why now? And Tyler Glynn, he's the executive director with BLADEC. If you guys are familiar with that organization, the Brainerd Lakes Area Economic Development, is it commission? Corporation. So he works with EDAs in Crow Wing County. So he works with the city of Brainerd, the city of Pequot, Cross Lake, Wright Baxter. So he has a lot of experience. So as we were going down this path of an EDA, I said right away, Tyler's got to be in on these interviews with me because he has this broad experience and he can answer questions that I wouldn't be able to answer, right? From working with all these different cities. But a lot of folks have asked, why the EDA and why now? And I actually want to turn it to my fellow council members because the answer I've been giving, hopefully it's right, is we've explained to people that the city did purchase a piece of property back at the end of 2024. And there have been different ideas and discussions around it. You know, what could happen, right? Speculation, brainstorming, dreaming, right? But really, an economic development authority, this is the lens and the answer we've been giving, is because it will help give direction, strategy, collaboration with members of the community and the council for not just that piece of property, but for the city of Nisswa overall as it moves forward. And I don't know if that sounds right to you gentlemen, but that's kind of the answer Tyler and I have been sharing with folks.
Yeah, that's correct. I just want to say one thing. I hope you didn't scare everybody. Yes, an EDA does have the authority to tax.
Oh, it doesn't mean it will though.
But our resolution states that they can only do that with the council approval. So, and that's one of the things we wanted to make sure was in a resolution. So
bonding, TIF, all of that is subject to
Yeah.
council.
Yes.
None of that can happen without us voting on it.
So they're not an autonomous authority for taxing. They've got to come to the council for approval.
Major developments that were in concept phase or whatever, would they go first to the EDA and then flush it out there and then bring it to the council, or how would that function? It's not just.
I think that's to be determined yet.
Yeah, it has, right, we have to get the EDA established, and then they amongst themselves would then determine, you know, what is kind of their mission, what are their key priorities, right? Who's going to be the treasurer, the secretary, right? Not treasurer, sorry, secretary, vice president, president of that group, right? So there's a lot of things that need to happen. And another talking point that Tyler and I have discussed as we've gone through interviews is he thinks at a point in time, the EDA will meet quarterly. And these meetings are, again, they're all open to the public, right? So they will be noticed. Unless there's sensitive things where they have to close it for a part of the meeting or whatnot. But at the beginning, he thinks the meetings are going to be a little more frequent while the group is getting established, right? Off the ground and running. Okay, so here's where things are at with the EDA. And this is also a good thing. That's something that I learned from Tyler. We had a large number of applications come in. He said more so than actually any other city that he works with. And the number keeps going up, right? So there are folks that are still submitting. So this council did set a motion of a time window when the application should be posted and when applications could be received. But actually state statute cannot bind the mayor's hands on the process to interview. And I wanted to be more open and inclusive and make sure that anyone that wanted to apply, even if they missed the deadline, right, can do so. Because again, state statute does not tie my hands and say, you only have 2 weeks to receive applications and interview people. That's not how it works. So we did 2 interview dates so far. May 19th was the first one and June 2nd was the second one. There are 2 applicants, and I'll share with you guys the applicants in a minute, that were not able to attend our June 2nd interviews. And trying to sync up my schedule with Tyler's is a bit more difficult now that we're in the high season. And so we have plans to do interviews next Tuesday morning, I believe. I think I still owe you an email on that. June 16th. So there are a couple folks that they've been out of town or they haven't been able to interview. And I think one of them can't actually make June 16th. So we're gonna have to look at the 18th or 19th to interview him. And then once all those interviews are done, Tyler and I are gonna synthesize like our thoughts. He's gonna share with me his perspective. And we've been talking throughout, and then we'll come to a point where I can make the appointment. So just being fully transparent and realistic, especially here with the council too, I do not think we're gonna be ready to make appointments next Tuesday at our June council meeting. If we need to come back and call a special meeting for it or do it in July, we just wanna make sure we're thorough. So the folks that we've interviewed so far, on May 19th, we interviewed Bruce Imholt. He's a gentleman that served on the Detroit Lake City Council for 25 years and was involved with the EDA over there. We've interviewed Mr. Andy Schaefer. We interviewed Dawn Southworth. She is the general manager at Grandview. Bob Fear, he's a local resident that has background working with large corporations, and he lived in different states around the country. And then Greg Newmeyer, he's a resident in the area. He has experience with economic authorities down in Iowa. So those were the ones we interviewed on May 19th. Then on June 2nd, we interviewed Valerie Wilkening. She's here tonight. She works at the hospital and has great experience. Sean Hansen. Sean was the previous chamber president before Cali, and she works at the outreach program. We interviewed Jake Huser. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He and his wife Katie own Moxie, the salon, before they decided to exit that business, and they've built a laundromat, and Jake is an insurance agent. Galen Strovers, he has his own business. He serves on the Public Works Committee, but had a strong interest in this. We interviewed Charla Philhauer. Charla was here. I don't know if she left. Her husband used to serve on the city council in Wadena. She has a great business background. She is the president of the Nisswa Women's Club. And then there was a young gentleman by the name of Kyle Allen. I had actually not met him before, but he lives right here in town, and he had a very strong interest in being on the EDA. The folks that we have not been able to interview yet or connect with, Mike Foy. So they own Main Street, Ernie's, and Dobro's, right? We've not been able to sync up with Mike. I ran into him at the gym last week and he told me my daughter's graduating. I'm sorry. I'm not blowing you off. I do want to interview. I still want to be considered, but he just needs to get through some stuff. And obviously the high season is kicking in for him too. Brandon Headland, he's a realtor. His office is just across the street. We have not been able to interview him yet, but we're looking to do that. He's out of town on the 16th, so we're going to have to look to interview him at a later date. And then an application did come in late. Tina Foster, she works with Sean Hansen at the outreach program. She has applied. And then Steve Larson, he is a gentleman that lives over off of Nashway and has an interest as well. So we still have 4 more we need to complete. And that is the status of things. Yes.
Lorraine Verskovich, East Linden. So would these people be appointed for a period of time or indefinitely?
I don't have the resolution in front of me, but it's staggered. So there's different terms, like out of the 7, I think there's a 1-year term, a 2-year, a 3-year, a 4-year, a 5-year, right? So
There's a 6-year too.
6-year too. The other interesting piece of information that I recently just found out, like late last week before I headed out of town on vacation, was that whichever members of this body are appointed, so the 2 elected officials are appointed, it has to align with their term. So that is something that I want to dig a little bit more into, because I want to understand if it's someone that potentially their term is up at the end of the year and they choose not to run again, but I think they'd be a really strong voice on the EDA, right? I want to understand a little bit more how that works and how that's going to impact these appointments. So that's part of the reason, like, we're not trying to slow it down, but we're not trying to rush it either, because this is such an important authority. We want to get it right. And also, as we've been interviewing folks, what Tyler and I have been looking at is, and talking about is, hey, we want diverse perspectives and diverse background experiences, diverse work experiences on this authority, right? So that we can get a good cross-section of voices of people that we think will bring good value to the city, will be very strategic on this authority, and will be able to help inform, especially when things come to council. Fred.
Fred Heidman, once again. A question that I have regarding the property and the EDA and the whole thing. So the city's purchased the property, developing an EDA. Who determines, is this going to be retail, professional, manufacturing, pole barns? I mean, who does is the city going to say this is where we want to go? Or does the EDA just EDA does?
That's kind of the point of it. The EDA is, and that's why Tyler had said at the beginning, there will be more frequent of meetings.
This group of people will vote on it still.
Well, we will vote on it, but they're going to make recommendations.
Yeah. So the council always has to vote on all that stuff. That's the way it's set up. That's the way it's always set up. Yeah.
Yes, I think as everyone realizes, this is probably one of the most visual pieces of property in the city of Nisswa. And, you know, what it becomes is going to put a stamp on what Nisswa is, or potentially could. So that's why I asked the question.
Any other questions on? Oh, him.
Thank you, Kim Evian. So obviously it's gonna be quite a long time before anything actually gets done with that property. Just wondering, how much is this costing us each year with taxes and loans every year? Sitting idle.
Do you know, Maggie, off the top of your head, what our
Well,
monthly payment is?
it's not a monthly, it's a biannual installment, correct? On the bond, and it's two separate bonds for the total of 2.3 on the principal rate, correct?
Correct.
And I think it's a three.
Um,
It's a, it's a 3% interest rate bond. One's taxable, the other one's non-taxable. Why? So the city could be able to sell highway frontage property. The bond itself was a 7-year bond, I believe, so amortized over that 2.3 divided by 7, I believe it's a 300
300 and stuff.
installment.
I'm
yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can pull it up.
Yeah. Yes, that 3%. I don't
But
have it
Maggie's trying to
sitting
look
right
it
here in
up.
front of me, but
Let's
the
see if
answer is
Maggie can
yes.
Find it,
The
so we
answer
don't
is
give a
yes. It's
inaccurate
that
number.
2.3 principal rate with the 3% interest.
For 2026, our bond payments for just the land is 395,000. And out of that, about a little over 100,000 is interest. So one of the loans, the bonds, comes off in 2030, and that is the taxable piece of it. So that is something that we're hoping, I mean, put our infrastructure, do whatever we need to do, sell off the parcels we want to sell. And then one of the bonds is interest only is the part that we're keeping. And so when the one bond falls off, then we will start making principal payments on the other bond until 2040, I believe.
I want to be respectful of everybody's time because it's almost 7. Are there any other questions, comments, input? Since we're all here together as it relates to the EDA or anything around this portion of the discussion? Al? No? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, council, do you have any closing comments or remarks you'd like to make? Councilmember Fraley? Councilmember London?
Nothing.
Councilmember Zahn?
Well, is there any other questions that the public
Yeah.
has on anything? Or open mic?
Nothing? Okay. Any closing remarks?
Pickle and 5?
You gonna play on my bocce team, Councilmember Hall? Okay, before we have everybody run off, wait, Jane, did you introduce yourself at the beginning? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we missed you. I do just want to recognize that 2 former mayors are here in the room with us tonight. Former Mayor of Nisswa, Fred Heidemann, and John Ryan. And I want to thank them for participating and being here because it is hard to be in public service, but we have such a great town and it's nice to have so much involvement from everybody. And want to thank our staff. Thank you for all your input and sharing with folks, and we appreciate you guys, and we will have another town hall in September.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming.